Oil is just one of the things on the head of our guest house this hour, and we're very honored to have him back after a bit of a hiatus. Dr. Herr Marc Faber, Wunderbar, Wunderkind, editor, publisher of the Gloom, Boom, Doom report. More boomy than doomy these days. Hello, Mark.
How are you?
Well,
nice
the world is going...
I saw you yesterday at the demonstrations.
No, I wasn't. I was flat on my back.
I was your brother.
Yeah, with a needle in my
okay.
under my tongue. But it's okay. You know, we bounce back and we cope because it takes forever to get well these days. So
I thought it was really you.
So the world's going to hell hand over fist, right now? No?
Well, I mean, what we had in the oil market over the last couple of years is essentially a reduction in demand from the developed world, from the United States, Western Europe, Japan, and continuous growth in emerging economies.
Yep.
So if you take a very optimistic view of the world, namely a global economic recovery, demand in the Western world will pick up and demand in the emerging world will continue to rise strongly. And so from a very optimistic scenario points of view, you should be long oil. Of course, we have had a huge run-up, and I think energy shares and oil is due for a correction. But in an optimistic scenario, you should be long oil and also other industrial commodities. In a very pessimistic scenario, you have to assume that the unrest will shift also to Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf, and that at that stage maybe production will be curtailed. And in that case, obviously, oil would go up ballistically.
I kind of wonder about that scenario, though, whether, I mean, you know, and I keep alluding to this, but, you know, even cities like Benghazi, you know, which fell into rebel control, a lot of those areas, you know, very quickly resumed selling oil because everybody needs money. Whether you're for or against dictators, you need the money. And if, like, the unrest spills over into Saudi Arabia, maybe that'll sort of like shake up the whole OPEC thing a little bit, and everybody will be trying to outsell each other. Couldn't this be a great thing?
Could be, but I mean, I wouldn't be that optimistic about it. You know, I mean,
I hope that
I think that first, oil prices would spike up before the additional production will come into play. And secondly, I'd just like to point out, yes, you can increase production, but to increase the reserves is very difficult and very costly. And the fact is simply that the world is burning more oil than it's adding new reserves every year. And so the level of reserves, of overall proven reserves, or the existing oil fields, that production will go down. And so you have to find new oil fields and develop new ones all the time. And that is very costly. I would estimate the cost, the marginal cost of new oil at, say, around $80 a barrel.
Karen, say hi to Herr Dr. Doom here before we take a break.
Mark, I guess it's how that whole peak oil theory came about. But when it comes to the last time around when we were watching oil prices, we saw the spike on the back of Iranian missile tests. But the fall in the price that time around was because demand in the US just wasn't quite there. Could that be the case this time around, though? We see a retreat when the demand story comes into play and it's not as strong as everyone thinks.
It is correct that, as I pointed out, in the last 3 years, the demand in the developed world went down. But for the first time in the history of capitalism now, you have essentially demand in emerging economies exceeding demand in the developed world. And therefore, the importance of the demand in the developed world is diminishing. And the importance, with very low per capita consumption of countries like China and India, is increasing. And therefore, I think longer term, you should be essentially exposed to energy in either scenario. In the scenario where you're ultra bearish, where you think World War III is going to start soon, as I believe, or in a very optimistic scenario. I mean, in both cases, you should be long, essentially, energy and energy-related shares.
And here I said you were sounding more doomy, and now you're talking about World War III. Thanks, Mark, for starting our Tuesday off on a good note. Now, we'll get back to that in a second. I'm going to have to recover from this one. The pacemaker needs rebatterying. Back with Dr. Doom, and I say that with a capital D in just a bit.